is the perfect RIA, in case you didn't know. Bringing you all the strategies to help your business grow. Are you happy? Are you satisfied? Are you hanging on the edge of your seat? Sit back and listen in while you feel the beat, yeah. Another myth bites the dust.
Welcome back to another amazing episode of the Perfect RIA podcast. I'm your host, Micah Shalansky, and with me is not Matthew Jarvis, but I have two rock star advisors that I have seen at a conference for years. And we're just wrapping up the Ed Slott conference, and we're going to do a quick little debrief. So I have Bill Harris with us and Jim Saunier. Did I get that right?
You did well. Very good. Very good. Not bad for an Alaskan.
We learn a little bit from now and then.
You done learn good.
How many years have I butchered it? All right, we won't go into that one. So Bill, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
It's going to be great. So Bill and you guys are both CFP, Certified Financial Planners, and you both have your independent financial planning practices helping out. And we've known each other for years. And I thought it'd be great to do a nice little debrief from the Ed Slott conference. So I guess the first thing when we talk about this is, why'd you decide to come to a conference? What's the main thing that you want to get out of a conference when you first start coming?
So for me, again, I've been a participant in the Ed Slott program for a while. So we haven't had a live conference in 2.5 years. So it was really great to get together, see some people. Most of the learning I get is out in the hallways, talking with people like you. And that's, I learned something about HSAs yesterday. I wasn't even in the class, but just hearing from other people what was going on was just a great experience. So I think that kind of learning is just so important.
Bill, I echo that. That's 100%. I love coming to conferences, not for sitting on my butt drinking hotel coffee, right? But it's those hallway experiences, those in-between conversations. Yeah, that has transformed my practice over the years. Jim, what about yourself? You can't use that one, sorry.
Well, Ed's very proud of his food, so we have to say that.
Now, if you're an Ed Slott member, you get that
You
joke.
get that one. You get that one. If you ever been to an Ed Slott, no, the 2-day or even in the classes that we go to, he does talk up his food. But very similar to both of you, I come to these to learn, and that's why I'm in the Ed Slott program.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, this time I was hoping to learn about the proposed regs under the Secure Act.
Yeah.
There's a lot of misinformation and confusion, and I'm proud that the IRS took something that was relatively simple and totally blotched it into this incredibly complex set of rules now. But that's mainly why I joined the Ed Slott program. But I go to, not concerts, I go to conferences in general for the networking.
Yeah.
Which for the last 2 years, we've been doing everything over Zoom, and you lack that networking, the interpersonal relationships, and that's why I like to come in person to these events.
Not to be too much of a selfish plug here, but that is the reason we created our mastermind programs the way it is because these in-between conversations are great. And what we focus on our mastermind is a little bit of learning, then a whole lot of experiences together. We go do adventures, we go do other things, et cetera. So we have more hallway conversations because we're going to create more time for them. So yeah, I love it.
And ultimately, great friendships. I mean, Bill, you and I have been hunting together, and I know you're going to try to come with us someday.
Well, Bill's going to win that ticket for us, and then we're definitely going to go.
We'll
so that is the plan.
And I've been up to Alaska fishing with you. So again,
a couple times.
Met some great friendships over the years.
And the interpersonal friendships is invaluable as well.
Yeah, amen. Well, let's talk about some fun tax stuff. Jim, as you mentioned, the IRS did a great job, or Congress did a great job of overcomplicating some very basic things.
I think it's the IRS on this one. It's their interpretation of what Congress passed. Congress was ambiguous. The IRS just chose to interpret it in a very complicated manner.
Well, let's be safe and just blame both of them.
All
right, fair enough. All right, so let's talk about this. What did you learn out of this conference? So you can pick on anything. We went through a bunch of different topics, but what things did you learn and take away from?
You can go first.
Oh, sure. Put me on the spot. Hey, listen, in the introduction, we talked about how I learned about HSAs. And what I always try to do when I'm at a conference like this is immediately which client has, you go through a lot of textbook stuff and you're like, oh, so-and-so client has that issue. Because sometimes there's a lot of just really deep, heavy material and you want to know how to apply it. So you guys came out of an HSA thing the other day and talked about how a child can be on their parents' healthcare plan, but be able to contribute to their own HSA and go above and beyond the family contribution amount. And I said, well, I get clients that fit that bill. So I'm excited to go home and put that
non-dependent child.
That was huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I wasn't in that class, but I heard about it. I'm like, that's awesome.
Yeah. So the quick summary on that one, Jim, jump in here if I've misheard this correctly. But if you have, let's go, a 19-year-old that's on a family health plan and they're non-dependent, right? They're self-sustaining, that's there, but they're still on their family health care coverage, then both, assuming it's a high deductible plan that qualifies for an HSA, then the parents can make a family HSA contribution, right? Which is the $7,300 plus potentially they catch up if they're over 55. In addition to that, the child can make a family contribution as well because they have their own, and they're under their own family plan.
Of the full amount.
Of
Correct.
the full of $7,300.
Right. Until they're 26 and off the parental plan
Correct.
and have to get their own plan, then they're going to go back down to what a single person can contribute.
That is a huge takeaway, right? That is something that I'm going to bring up in multiple webinars. I'm going to be bringing it up in conferences, right? Because even though it doesn't apply, this is going to show one of those little details that you're paying attention to tax law and a key thing that other people aren't talking about. So
Let's give a plug to the gentleman in the Ed Slott group. Does anybody have it? Can look it up? He's like the
mystery
Ed
man.
Slott of HSAs. This guy is incredible.
I tell you what, if you want to, just email us, lifestyle@theperfectria.com. Shoot us in there. Let us know you want that.
I'll pull it up in a second.
All right, Bill's more amazing than I am.
He is the Ed Slott
Just
of
so
HSAs.
people out in podcast land know, I do have a manual in front of me.
He's searching his mind.
I'm searching the database, so I will get you that. So move on, and we'll get to it.
All right, well, let's pick on HSAs for a little bit longer, right? Another thing that I thought was just a solid idea that they talked about.
Ryan McEwen.
Ryan McEwen.
Hopefully, I'm pronouncing that as well.
McKeown. Yeah, he was a guru of this information, just did a phenomenal job. So I would definitely
And
take a class.
What's his website? Give that to the listeners.
It's wealthenhancement.com.
All right, you want to give out a cell phone number as well? No, all right, just kidding. We won't give that one out.
Hopefully, we're not getting him in trouble with his compliance people. He said, what?
He said, what? You can't do that. Well, the other thing that I really liked about this, and I'm going to do a whole post on this because, as you know, we specialize with federal employees, about a little bit of an edgy post is, should you fund your HSA before you fund your 401k or your TSP, right? Take the match out just for discussion. But let's say I'm going to make my math easy. The first $7,000, let's say there's a match. Okay, you're going to put the match in at least to your K plan or your TSP. But then other than that, what should you be funding? He made one heck of an argument that you should be max funding your HSA over your 401k or your TSP.
Oh, because it gets the trifecta or the quadfecta
Amen.
on taxes.
Yeah.
No, that was a
I wasn't there, and I'd be like, HSA all the way.
Yeah. So Jim, just go ahead and run through that real quick. What's the quadfecta of taxes?
Well, I'm not. The quadfecta may not work in your situation because.
Because I'm in Alaska. You got an Alaska joke coming on?
No, putting the contribution into an HSA, but through your own contribution and not through a payroll deduction, you won't get the quad of the quadfecta, but you can still get the trifecta. And that's going to be the money going into the HSA is obviously going to be deductible on your taxes.
Right.
It's going to grow tax deferred inside the HSA.
That's number
It's going
two.
to be removed tax free, assuming it's qualified for medical
Potentially.
expenses. The quad, the extra little tax pot, is if your contributions go in via payroll deduction on your employer, then those will be exempt from FICA taxes, payroll taxes.
Right.
But if you're going to do the strategy that you said, you're going to fund the HSA yourself out of your cash flow rather than putting it in to your 401k or your TSP or whatever the case may be, you'll miss that quad pot.
Yeah, potentially, depending on what your employer allows.
Correct.
Yeah, fair enough. No, I think that's a great one. So a lot of things inside of HSAs. Another great takeaway that I got from the HSA side was one of the things that I've known, but it's just great. I'm going to echo this more with clients. There's no time restriction on when you can take the money out. This is a big misconception coming from the FSA, right? The flexible spending account rules, as people put money in, they're like, oh crap, well, I have a limited time before I can take that money out. Not with the HSA. I can keep socking away that $7,000 and change every single year into this account. And if I have my receipts, I can keep my receipts for 20 years. Then 20 years later, I can take a giant lump sum of all of my qualified medical expenses over the last 20 years that I have those receipts for. And it all comes out 100% tax-free.
Correct.
Yeah.
Tax-free. And a beneficiary, a non-spouse beneficiary who would have to close the HSA and pay taxes on that can use those old receipts within 12 months of your death.
That's right.
And say, and take it out. And it's going to go to them, but just say it's to reimburse for medical expenses that you had incurred while you were alive. I thought that was very interesting. Save those and let people know where they are. And we might as well give a shout out that one of the things that I wanted to point out to you and your listeners is you learn so much more at conferences than sometimes what the main topic is, which in Ed's group is IRAs.
IRAs, yeah. But
we learned something, and I have it somewhere in here, but Micah, you're the tech geek here, so you'll remember. For lack of a better term, the beneficiary designation for iPhones.
Oh my gosh, that was great.
And that was so important. The reason I'm mentioning that is maybe your receipts that someone is going to keep will be digitalized for all your healthcare expenses over the years.
Yeah.
And now, and Michael will share in a minute, I'm putting him on a spot, where to put a little legitimate beneficiary designation into your iPhone, iPad,
iCloud,
whatever the heck
your
it
iCloud
is,
account.
iCloud.
Yeah.
And if you pass away, someone by Apple will be allowed to get all that information.
Yeah. It is a great thing. Now, I'm going to step up one step higher to that while I'm thinking about exactly how to do this. But it's the RFUDA, right? That you have to, the Digital Assets Act that's there, that you need to make sure is incorporated into your client's estate plan. And most of the time it's not. Now, our attorney Work does a great job of that. But this is a thing where you need to have one in your estate planning documents is the catch-all in your will, in your trust, et cetera, who owns your digital assets when you die. But better than that is a beneficiary designation, right? Just like in it. So the way that you would do this in your iPhone is pretty simple. You just go into your settings. At the very top, you click on your name. So click on Micah Shalansky. Then inside of there, when you go into your passwords account, what it's going to say is they have legacy contacts. And you can go inside of there and you can add more people into that account. And when you add more people into there, it's going to be great. You can show up and you can put my wife on there. I can put my sister on there, anyone else. So that way, if I die, they can use then that code. They can go to Apple. They can get my digital assets that they own.
And it could be the digital copies of your health expenses that you had during your life, and whoever inherits your non-spouse beneficiary, who inherits your HSA, can use those digital assets within 12 months, digital receipts within 12 months of your death to take that money out tax-free, which otherwise would have been subject to taxes.
And this is kind of like cutting edge, new frontier of estate planning. If you think about it, I can't tell you how many songs I've bought on Apple iTunes, airline miles, like everything's digital. It's like, how do you access that? So you better have a good plan around how your digital estate plan is going to work.
And keep in mind, right, what a lot of clients are going to default to doing is they're saying, oh, well, I shared my password with my son. I shared my password with my daughter or whatever. Well, that's great. That's also illegal, right? Yep. That's fraud. You're logging in under someone else's name. You're considered a hacker. This doesn't look too good. You have to give them legal permission to do that. And that's done in estate planning documents, and it's done by beneficiary designations with these digital assets.
Yep.
That's great. Yeah,
fascinating stuff.
Getting stuff out of conferences that you didn't intend to get out of, right? I mean, that's a huge thing. That was not a takeaway I expected to come out of this conference at all. No, I didn't expect that
either. And that's, again, that's the benefit of going to conferences.
I love it. All right, Jim, put you on the spot again. What else did you learn in this one that you're going to take back and implement with clients?
Well, hands down, Jeff Levine. I didn't even know Jeff was going to be here.
Oh, yeah. Now, if you don't, I have a great clip of Jeff Levine talking to Jim. It is amazing. So we might publish that later.
That end? Micah, can you do it?
Well, why don't you tell the whole story? Years ago, it was when Ed had a workbook, right? And I found a mistake in it or something?
Yeah, we were going through the workbook and you found a mistake in it.
This was about 3 years ago. Ed gave us a workbook at his event.
Yes.
And we had to fill in. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I do.
And so we went up on stage and we went up with Ed. We were working through the workbook. And just like anyone else, no one likes to be wrong, right? So fair enough. And so we're going through it. Anyways, on the iPad that's sitting there where we find out with the mistake, I wrote on the iPad, Jim is wrong. And that just stuck.
Wait, before you go on, I found it was a mistake.
Correct. You were correct. Jim was correct.
We wanted to point out to Ed he made a mistake. Go ahead, take over the story.
Yeah, so we wanted to point it out that he made a mistake, but on the iPad, I wrote in big letters, Jim is wrong, and that stuck in Ed's mind. That was there. And so we went back to the seats and he said, all right, I got to make a correction and I got to give credit to the one who's doing it. He's like, wait, where's the Jim is wrong? Jim is wrong group? And he's yelling it from the speakers, 400 people there. I thought it was amazing. Jim, slightly less so for some reason.
Because I was not wrong and Micah took credit for being right. But it's funny how you put that idea in his head subconsciously.
Right.
By writing in big letters, which I did not see, Jim is wrong. Anyways,
took
where
over.
we're going with that is Jeff Levine, who I'm sure all your listeners know. Do you have to introduce who Jeff is? I doubt it. Everyone's probably heard of Jeff.
Jeff is great. If you don't follow his tax work, he's really good. He's kind of on the cutting edge. Whenever there's new tax acts that come out, he pushes out a ton of information. He's involved a little with, I think, with XY Tax, involved a little with Holista Plan. He used to have his own practice. I don't know, but does he still have his own practice?
I don't know about that, but his Twitter is at CPA Planner.
Okay.
And he's prolific on Twitter.
Doesn't he? Isn't he
I would
with?
certainly recommend tuning into him.
He's with the company now that Kitsis is
Buckingham?
with.
Buckingham.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a solid guy, great tax information. Highly suggest you follow him.
Very smart. I had no
Right.
idea he was going to be here. He used to be one of the technical consultants for the Ed
did.
Slot Group years ago. And everybody loved listening to Jeff. And he came, and I still took away. I'm just amazed with this strategy. So I'm going to mention it again. It's that 2038 trust, otherwise known as a testimony powers of appointment trust.
Now-
I am floored with that strategy.
Oh, it's such a great idea for those that don't live in Alaska, right? Because you live in Alaska, we don't need to do this complex thing. But what you're talking about here is estate planning and step up in adjustment in basis,
Double
which
step
happen
up in basis potential.
that we get in community property states or quasi-community property states like Alaska, but we have so many other states that are separate property, and you have that asset. That how do you get this full step up in basis or a
At
double
the death
step up
of
in
each
basis?
spouse.
That is correct. They're the
key
first to
here.
die. Yeah.
The death of each spouse. So I was just really intrigued by that. That's why I asked him to repeat. He's got to be sick of me every time he's seen me over the past day and a half. I keep asking him, are you sure this is legitimate? You sure we can do it? And what do I tell an attorney that I want to create? And that's when he called it a 2038 today. Did you guys ever hear that?
Yeah.
Okay, because I had never even heard of that before.
Kind of, I'll say fun. Like you go through and your client comes in and says, I have a year left to live. And our job is to say, that's awful, but let's do this right now. Move all your assets over here.
Right,
you know?
right. Let's do all the
That's
planning.
the reality of what we do. Sometimes
Sadly, all jokes aside,
Yeah.
I've been exposed to that twice
Yeah.
over the past 18 months.
Yeah, I believe it.
And it is so hard, especially because I know my clients very well. And I am so saddened when I hear this. But my mind is instantly thinking, because I know their case, I know the situation, I know what we have to do. For instance, homes in Colorado have appreciated so much and other real estate, and I know what their investments are. And I have a very hard time breaching from that point, okay, to the inevitable. So let's talk about what we're going to do. And it's not easy. So,
Yeah.
and I'm sure you guys have all experienced the same, but it's
Absolutely.
not an easy discussion to have.
You know, I'm going to say that the key into that, and feel free to push back on me, gentlemen, if you disagree, but is having a process to go through, having a checklist to go through, right? Because when you're in a state, I've known a client for 15, 16, 20 years, you've gone through all these experiences with them, then they die. You know what? You are a little emotionally compromised as well.
I agree.
And so how do we make sure we stay on our A game? And I'm going to say that's processes and checklists. And like this type of strategy you're talking about, this has to be on your death process. You know what? Another one that needs to be there is Roth conversions, right? For that first year, the widow is going to have a widow tax return. It's still married filing joint before they're off on a single return and they get hit with a widow penalty and a higher tax rate. That's another thing that has to be on this checklist is should you be looking at Roth conversions, which you're not really thinking about at death, but you know what? That could be a huge tax planning strategy for them.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that was some of the good takeaways that I got was not even listening to Ed and his technical consultants. It's what we got, again, from chatting to everybody in the breaks and attending these breakout sessions, as they call them, where it's optional, but most people attend it, and learning from other people that are here.
I just want to change the game a little, and if you
go
can
for
put
it.
some sad music. But it really hit me today. The stretch IRA is dead. It's no more.
Yeah.
And I've known that, but I was like, yeah, it really is. It's gone. Like that strategy is just no more. So I think going through, I know we got clarification on the Secure Act and more, what was it, 267 pages long?
Yeah, 290
275.
pages. Oh, 275? Yeah.
And I thought-
proposed regulations, right? Don't worry, in 20 years, we should have the final regulations. By that time, they'll pass Secure Act 2.0.
Yeah. I thought I had a decent grasp on what that was, but as we went through it over the last couple of days, I'm like, I got to read this and reread it again, and it's complex. I mean, we have the lifetime tables and all that kind of stuff.
Sure, yeah.
And I think we talked about the old one. When you inherit, this is for the chart to use, and then down the bottom it has all these additional things that applies to now, and it's changed so much. And we started this conversation talking about how Congress or the IRS, whoever did it, they really made this complicated.
Yeah.
The Perfect RIA challenges financial advisors to answer the question, what would you do if you weren't afraid? Surround yourself with financial advisors who share your common values and goals towards success. The advisor is you. The time is now. Don't be like most people who fail to take action and achieve their dreams. Go online today at theperfectria.com and decide what type of financial advisor you plan to be.
But this is a great, I'm going to call it dishwasher rule, right? Let's get credit for the work that we do. So this is a great reason that you should get out there and review your client's estate planning, right? And say, hey, now does their trust comply with the new changes in the Secure Act? It may not. Whether it does or doesn't, get credit for the work that you're going to do. Get credit for talking about, you said the death of the stretch IRA, right, Bill? Let's make sure we're chatting about that with the clients and what impact that's actually going to have that's there. And keep in mind with the new proposed regs that's there, even under that 10-year rule, if a client passes away after the required beginning date, right? So after they have to take their RMD, there's still an RMD that the client has to take, even the beneficiary has to take within the first 9 years. So every year they got to take an RMD, plus they have the 10-year rule. So these things are complex. We got to make sure we really understand that and how these beneficiary rules are, and we're adequately explaining them to our clients and what impact that actually means, right? The death of the stretch IRA, clients may or may not get that, what impact that has, right? We need to be able to explain it to them and say, great, now here's our next planning strategy that we need to do, showing your worth.
Absolutely. And one thing that I picked up in respect to that, and Ed tried to make very clear, is these are just proposed regulations. The final rules are not out. But I was floored when he began this whole discussion, and I wrote it down, and he said, remember the Tax Reform Act of 1986?
That's right.
Which was as of then, was the biggest impact to the U.S. tax code. And he said, we have proof of that because the Internal Revenue Code used to be called the Internal Revenue Code of 1954, but they changed it to the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 after this Tax Act change. Anyways, his point was the final IRA distribution regulations did not come out until 2001.
Wow.
I think it's 2003. I think it was even later.
Oh, I wrote down 2001, but it could be 2003.
15, 17 years
Either
later,
way.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's how long it took the 86 Tax Act rules to be finalized. So Ed warned us, and I guess we'll pass this warning on. I was always telling clients, these are proposed regs. Don't worry about it. We're not going to do anything until I get the final. Because I thought the final, I said, okay, well, they're going to close it sometime in May. They'll probably be out by August. Literally, that's what I was thinking. And I had shared that with some people. And now Ed says, we don't know. Or he doesn't know when they're going to come out. And that's why he shared that story. Look, it took 15 or maybe 17 years from the 86 changes to get the final rules.
Wow.
And he said, you guys need to start acting as if these proposed regs are the final rules. So for all you guys listening and gals listening who are thinking, well, I'll wait till the final rules come out and then I'll start learning this and then I'll start following this and paying attention. You should be paying attention now and learning it now, even under the proposed rules, because we don't know when the final rules are going to come out.
Jim, that's such a great point. I want to add to that and say you also need to know where these gray areas are in the proposed rules, right? There's some things, okay, they're proposed, yeah, they can change it, but there's some things that they're probably not going to change. There's also a few gray areas that are out there that we're not 100% sure on what the IRS means and how they're going to rule on it. You need to be educating your client about this, right? Just to say, Micah, you told me, what I want my clients to say if the IRS changes the rules and we were wrong was, well, Micah, we made our best guess, but I know you told me they're proposed, right? Well, let's make sure you're documenting that, mate. Let's make sure you're communicating that. And guess what? CPAs are not on top of this stuff, right? They don't know a lot of this stuff. So this is a great way that you can do a nice center of influence campaign, reaching out to CPAs and sharing some of this information as well.
Yeah, the biggest grade that I got and still confuses me to a degree is the distributions, the RMDs between years 1 and 9 under the 10-year rule. If someone dies before their required beginning date, allegedly there will be no distributions. But if you die after your required beginning date, there will be distributions versus during those first 9 of the 10 years. And the consultants were making it clear That's their understanding, but there is no guarantee
absolutely.
that being exempt, if someone dies before the required beginning dates, being exempt for those first 10 years, or technically 9 years, is going to apply or not. So I'm sitting there thinking, well, I've got clients already in that boat. Should we start taking distributions because there's no clear guidance? It's kind of a gray area.
Yep.
Everything I have been reading on is saying if someone died before the required beginning date, there are no distributions the first 10 years.
9. Yeah, 10 years you got to distribute
9.
it. Yeah.
And the reason we keep saying 9/10, and there's some ambiguity here, folks, is in year 10, the required distribution is the rest of the account.
Correct. 100%.
100%.
It's very easy to calculate, which is great. Take it all.
Whereas the first 9 years, it's going to be distributions based on the remaining life expectancy of the, no, excuse me, not the remaining life expectancy, the life expectancy of the beneficiary.
Right.
And Mike, if I can paint a little picture,
Yeah.
you know, the three of us are in the room, listen to the conference and the speakers, and they'll say, and we'll hear something. We'll all be like, "Oh, did you say what I thought he said?" And we start talking about it in the back of the room. But I think we looked at it was a calculation. A lot of people thought it was interpreted if you're a spouse, you could go the 10-year rule, or you could go in wait year 9 and then roll it over to your own spousal IRA. But then we saw the calculation of what you got to go through.
Right.
And it's complex.
No one's going to do that anymore.
Oh, it's a horrible idea.
No one's going to do it
It's a
anymore.
horrible idea.
Because they essentially killed it with the hypothetical RMD calculation.
Oh
I was
my
just gonna
gosh.
bring that up.
Yeah. All right. Before we get to that complexity, right? One of the things, Jim, I want to go back to something that you said. So let's go into that scenario. I want to give a quick planning point of something I'm thinking about doing, and push back on me if you have a better idea. Or
Literally?
you think this is horrible. Yeah, it's okay. I can edit this thing later.
So you can
Oh,
literally
physically push back on
physically
me.
push back on
That's
you?
right. We'll tell people later about what happened to your jaw. All right. So you had brought up the point about we don't know. We think that if somebody dies before the required beginning date, there's no RMDs. Let's go with that theory.
For the
Right.
beneficiary.
For the beneficiary, right? Until year 10. Great. Well, what if we wanted to be ultra conservative and said, you know what? Maybe there would be, because now there's that rule that's out there. It says, at least as rapidly they're supposed to take money out. So one thing I'm thinking about doing is, let's say the RMD is X amount of dollars, 6,000, 10,000 a year, whatever it is. My plan is, okay, if the beneficiary has another IRA account, maybe that just makes sense to do more Roth conversions with. I use whatever the RMD is from one account just to pay taxes, and on their own accounts, because you can't do a Roth conversion on an inherited account. But on the beneficiary's own IRA account that they have, start doing Roth conversions with those accounts. So if I'm really concerned about this RMD thing, well, then take it. But instead of just taking that money out, why don't I use it for something else? Why don't I do Roth conversions with it? Why don't I do something else with that money?
Well, you can't legitimately convert the RMD from a beneficiary. You're talking about using that money to
You
pay
pay taxes. Yeah, it's from the beneficiary IRA, right? I'd take that money out and I'd send it to Aunt Iris, right? Then from the beneficiary's own IRA, not an inherited IRA, right? Their own account that they have, assuming they have one. Then I'd start doing Roth conversions.
Taking a
on that
bad
account.
thing, turn it into a good thing.
Exactly.
Lemons out of lemonade.
Lemon out of lemonade. That's what we're all
Mike,
about here.
I think that's a great idea. I'm a big believer in the Roth, and obviously this just lessens the tax burden because you inherited the money and
Yeah.
you got to take it out anyways. So
Love it.
I don't see any downside.
Perfect. Well, talking about downside, let's talk about your hypothetical recalculated RMDs you just brought up.
And that's not a hypothetical. This isn't a hypothetical topic. This is the legitimate name of what the IRS came up with.
Yeah, so I just learned about it today. It's called the hypothetical retroactive spousal RMD. Would people like to know the Secure Act regulation pages for reference, Micah, so they can go back and look at it?
Give them the pages.
Yeah, it's in the Secure Act regs, page 67. Proposed regs, page 67 through 69, 75. 241 through 244, 254, and 255. Go ahead.
To me, it's what is essentially going to kill the strategy of a spouse inheriting the IRA. She is allowed, or he is allowed, to choose either the 10-year or move it to their own.
Right.
The IRS was trying to close this loophole of, okay, well, I'm going to do it under the 10-year. And if they died before the required beginning date, I can leave that sitting for 9 years.
Yep.
And then in the 9th year, before the 10th year, because year 10, it's 100% RMD. In the 9th year, I'm going to move this to my own IRA
Right.
and treat it that way.
So I just skipped out of 9 years of RMDs or a little bit less than that, that I had to take distributions. Now I stuck it in my own account, right? Which was clever. But then, Bill, to your point, the IRS said that was a little too clever.
A little too clever. And now you got to take some, if you're going to do that somewhere, you're going to have to take some, you're not going to be able to roll it all over. You're going to have to take some.
So
you have
basically,
to go back
they got
and figure out the December 31st balance for each of the years you kept it under the quote unquote 10-year rule.
Right.
Figure out what the RMD would have been each of those years, add it all together and take it out in one lump sum RMD in the year that you go to move it or roll it, because the spouse can do a spousal rollover, roll it over into your own IRA. Yeah. You got to take a massive distribution. So it essentially kills the whole purpose of that.
There could be pros and cons with that, right? We could find an edge case potentially where that's going to make sense. Yeah, but great news is I'm going to make some lemonade out of lemons here. There's no penalty for this, right? So they're not going retroactive with a penalty. It's just the distribution and pay taxes. So that's a positive thing that's going to be there. But again, the nightmare of the calculation to go and do this kind of kills it right there. It's just not worth it.
I think early on we were interpreting this too as you have a choice. You can go either the 10-year or you can roll it over. Like now, then people are getting tricky with it. Now it's like, okay, we got some more definition of how this works. And again, this just goes into how complex these rules are. Thank you, IRS or Congress or whoever did it. So I guess that keeps us employed, right?
Amen. All right. Well, guys, this podcast is all about action items, right? What can advisors take? What can we learn from this information and take actions on? So I'd love us to boil it down to one thing. I'll go ahead and go first. What's one thing that we're going to do after this when we go back to our office and implement? For me, I'm going to go back and it's going to be in our list. We're going to update our checklists of the year of death. I've had a couple of clients pass away and I'm just thinking, you know what, I really need to do this. Our checklist in year of death, what are things that we need to be thinking about, especially how do digital assets play into it, these types of beneficiaries, what tax planning strategies are there in year of death? And I really want to make sure that's top notch while it's on top of my mind.
Yeah. For me, it's literally go through these manuals with my team and kind of look and start to make a list, like which clients does this apply to, and start to go after it.
Yeah, I could go off on such a tangent on that one, Bill, because how much time do we spend on our own education?
Yep.
But we deprive our team on this education. The more we can educate our team and the more competent and educated they can become, the better that they're going to be. That's the better massive value, delivering massive value, right, to our clients in the end. So I love that one. That's a great one. Sorry, Jim, you got to top that one.
I can do it.
All right.
The challenge is on.
Gauntlet has been thrown.
It has been thrown. This is all right. We'll try this. I got three options here. Couple of the takeaways that I got that we're definitely going to start looking at. We'll go back to the HSA one again because it was really good. One. I like the idea, and this is one that it makes sense. And I believe, I can't say for certain, but I believe I have done this in the past, but I totally forgot about it. Clients who are over the age of 59 and a half and have an HSA. So you need to be both.
Sure.
If they're funding the HSA, not through a payroll deduction, but they're funding an HSA through their own, like I do. I don't do mine through a payroll deduction. I do it on my own. So if they were to take the money, let's say they're allowed to put in the Family Max, $9,300. Take the $9,300 out of their IRA because they're over 59 and a half.
Great idea.
No 10% early withdrawal penalty. Yes, it's going to be taxable. Y'all are yelling at your iPod playing devices right now. But once they take that $9,300 out, put it into the HSA. Now they get a $9,300 deduction on their taxes. So it's a wash. But you've taken an asset that is going to always be subject to taxes when it's removed from the traditional IRA,
right,
and put it into an account that will never be subject to taxes, assuming you take it out for qualified medical expenses, which isn't that difficult to do throughout the rest of your retirement.
Amen.
So I like that. So I have a note here that we're going to go back and start looking for all our clients that fall into that category. The other one that I'm going to have us do, because it can burn us, especially in the year that a client turns 65, I have to remember to keep paying attention to the month that they go on Medicare. Mm-hmm. Because for HSA contribution eligibility, they essentially went on Medicare 6 months before they actually go on Medicare. Now, Medicare does that to cover medical expenses that you might have incurred just before going on. So they're trying to do a good thing, but it's a bad thing because you're deemed to be on it 6 months earlier.
Sooner.
You cannot contribute to an HSA during that 6 months period. So you may have to go back and remove that as an excess contribution, which was another element we learned, which made me go, We have in our office, we'll call it things that make you go, It's like that song that came out a long time ago. So if we have a thing, we share it with everyone. And what I learned and didn't realize, everybody should know, removing an excess contribution from an IRA, you have until October 15th of the year following the year you made the excess contribution. But removing an excess contribution to an HSA, you only have till April 15th of the year following the year your client made the excess contribution. So don't think you have until October. You only have until April. So we're going to, again, try to pay attention to that 6-month window. Part of what you said, build it into, you called it a checklist. We call it build it into our SOP, standard operating procedure.
Sure.
But build that in that we're paying closer attention to when a client's going to go on Medicare, and make sure we reach out to them 6 months before, reminding them if they are contributing to an HSA,
I love it.
You have to prorate that last 6 months and you may not be allowed to do it. So those were the two of the three. I don't want to get into the third one and bore your listeners, but did I win the challenge?
I don't know about that one. I think we'll play that Jim is wrong.
Wrong.
I thought all these were great things to be really actionable on and things that we're going to do. Remember the dishwasher rule when we're going out, it's not just enough to say it, right? And to do it internally, we got to be sharing that with a client. One other thing, and then Bill, I know you have a comment I want to make sure I bring up too. I'm going to say this is the importance of having a group of people to talk with at a conference, right? So thank you to you guys because one, we were only told to quiet down one time. I thought that was impressive.
We were right at the start.
Right at the start.
Someone ratted us out.
That was ridiculous.
Had to be one of the people sitting near us.
Yeah, pretty much communists. All right. But, it's the group of having a couple guys with you and being able to go through this, like when they're talking about it on stage, to be able to lean over, hey, Bill, did he say this? All right, Jim, how does this apply here? And that's really powerful, at least for me in conferences. So thank you guys for that.
Yeah. I want to just end on a fun cautionary tale.
Let's do it.
Andy Ives is one of our technical consultants at Ed Slott, and he read this. And we spend a lot of time in these meetings going through private letter rulings and tax court cases, and it usually ends badly. And it's always the taxpayer is responsible, right?
Right.
And so he literally in the regs, it says, well, a custodian may calculate an RMD, but that custodian is not required to calculate the RMD correctly. So for your listeners, don't be trusting your custodians. You better know how to do this. And just one other final pop to you, Michael, I love the podcast. You guys are doing great work, so keep it up.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate it.
Podcast, so thank you.
And where can they find more information about you at, our listeners?
I'm on Twitter at Bill M. Harris, and you can LinkedIn Bill Harris as well, WH Cornerstone Investments. So
excellent. And Jim?
I'm not on Twitter. Wouldn't even know how to tweet a tweet. Or Twitter tweet, whatever the hell they call that thing. Not on Twitter, not on Facebook.
But you got a pretty good podcast.
We do have a podcast, Retirement and IRA Show, but that's about it for social media. I'm not on any of that.
I was thrown off of Facebook for violating community standards, but I don't know why.
I like you even more.
What did
All
you
right,
say?
This is perfect.
This is
That's
something.
the irony. I don't post. I just got this message one day. It says, you've been removed for violating community standards. I'm like, I wasn't even on Facebook.
They must have looked at your voter registration.
That's right.
Probably knows.
Well, on that note, guys, it's always about taking action. Take this information. Make sure you go do it. Make sure you give us 5 stars. And until next time, happy planning.
Hold on before we go. Something that you need to know. This isn't tax, legal, or investment advice. That isn't our intent. Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice. Be a better husband, father, mother, and wife. The perfect RIA, the perfect RIA.